What is up, guys? Welcome to my ranking of the Mission Impossible franchise. All 8 films now with the release of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, ranked worst to best. I'm sorry this video is hitting you a little bit later than what I normally would have, and I was not able to get a full review out for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I've been busy as hell for this entire month, and it's really starting to just completely pile up on me the last week or so. So this is just the best I'm going to be able to do. So I am going to talk a bit more extensively about The Final Reckoning when I do get to that movie in this spot. I'm going to try to talk about it in a spoiler-free fashion at first. All the other films in this franchise are old enough where I'm going to talk full spoilers about them. So if you're a fan of Mission Impossible, you've seen them all, you're totally safe. If you're wondering if I should get into the Mission Impossible franchise, enthusiastically, yes. It's one of the greatest franchises of all time. It might be the greatest action franchise of all time. And I am one of those weird people that I like every single movie in this franchise. Even my number 8, I would give a thumbs up to. So this is also one of those rankings that's a little difficult. You know, there's a number of movies on this list that are very close where I could literally interchange them tomorrow, an hour from now, and feel totally confident with that ranking. So this is a really fun franchise, a really good franchise to discuss. But I do have my preferences, as we all do. Let me know your preferences down below in the comment section, maybe even a little bit of context to why you have them placed where you have them placed. And now let's talk about Mission Impossible, ranked worst to best. Coming in at number 8, my least favorite of these films really isn't a controversial statement whatsoever. That's Mission Impossible 2. Now, I do have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. I saw this movie in theaters twice. I loved it. I watched it all the time at home. I loved the Metallica music video. It's still one of my favorite Metallica songs. And even though the film certainly has not aged so well, John Woo's style has not aged so well, and now that we're 8 films in, this is the one movie in this franchise that totally feels like an outlier. It feels like there's nothing here narratively that really works itself into the other franchise movies at all, where you could probably watch Mission Impossible all the way through to The Final Reckoning and skip Mission Impossible 2, and you will not have any sacrifice in story whatsoever. But I still have fun with this one. There's still something about the nature of this movie being kind of this weird, over-the-top, stylistic action film that is still fun to me. So I can watch this. I can still have a good time with it. You know, if you speed up all the slow-mo stuff, you can watch this movie in like 45 minutes. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I totally get why people don't like this one. I get why a lot of people think that it's the worst of the franchise. Obviously, I agree with that. But I still have enough fun with Mission Impossible 2 and the over-the-top stunts and the love triangle nature to this movie, and focusing not so much on like this the balance of the world is on Ethan Hunt's shoulders type storyline. It's more so just about him trying to save this girl that he loves and then he never talks about again for the rest of the franchise. There's something that's like oddly appealing about it. So easily number 8, but I still like it. Coming in at number 7 is going to be the newest film, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Now, even though it is number 7 and it's right above Mission Impossible 2, I think this is a much better film than Mission Impossible 2, and there is a sizable gap between the two. I would give Mission Impossible 2 like 3 out of 5. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, I'm closer to 3.75, maybe even lingering on a 4 for certain reasons. But I do think that the rest of the movies in this franchise are so fucking great that this easily is the most disappointing one since the second film. Now, on the positive side, and this is still the spoiler-free spot, I think that the action sequences, the big premiere sequences, the stunts and everything that they're really going for here and are wanting to be the big standout moments of this movie, they're all-timers. Like, you have the underwater sub sequence that I think was incredibly tension-filled. It was the most, like, uncomfortable I've ever felt in any segment of a Mission Impossible film, just like almost like I'm holding my breath with Ethan. And the in the air stunt with Tom Cruise hanging off of a plane, I didn't think with the poster, I never watched the trailer for the film. I didn't think that the visual of that in the poster, that this was going to be anywhere near one of the best stunts that he has done, because he's already hung off the side of a plane before, and he's went up a helicopter, he's jumped off of a fucking cliff, like he's done all this crazy stuff. I'm like, that doesn't seem like it's going to be that impressive. Let me tell you, the way that it is executed in the movie, the way that they shoot it, the way that they edit it, it is the wildest stunt that he's ever done. I'm not going to say it's my favorite because it's not. That's reserved for the movie that's at number 1. But as far as like the balls, like just the marveling of like, holy shit, dude, you're dancing with death. this is the most impressive thing that Tom Cruise has ever done as a stunt worker. So I thought that sequence was absolutely mind-blowing, especially to see it in IMAX. I think that there's a lot of interesting things going on tonally with this movie. It definitely has that sense of finality to it. It definitely feels like a culmination of something, the conclusion, the finale. There's a lot of huge stakes here, and I do a good job at establishing how huge the stakes are. I think that there's a very kind of dark, somber tone throughout the film that makes sense for this being like a sense of finality type story, and having the world's fate and the team's fate in the balance, and really feeling like anybody in this team could die this time around. I think they established that really well. I also think that where they decide to leave things off narratively was a nice compromise between having something that has a sense of finality to it while leaving the window open to maybe do some things in the future, which I have every confidence in the world eventually we will do. I don't think this was ever meant to be the final Mission Impossible. I think when you watch interviews with Tom Cruise on the red carpet and somebody asks him, "So Tom, is this the final Mission Impossible film?" And his answer is always, "It's called The Final Reckoning." That is an answer that tells you everything that you need to know. The final in the title is to have this stakes established. It's to get people to the theaters. It's to have some kind of a conclusion here, which is really the second half of the Dead Reckoning story. But I think Tom Cruise, his plan is to go off for a while, reestablish some of his other franchises like Days of Thunder, give us another Maverick movie, and then sometime within the next 8 to 10 years minimum, or maybe maximum, I should say, we'll get another Mission Impossible film, whether he's the star of it or he's just a piece of it. So I think that the way that they decided to end it off was satisfying for me. You know, I don't think that we needed to have a movie that completely definitively closes out the movies forever. I think sometimes there's value in leaving the window open, even if we never walk back through it. Now, on the negative side of things, I think this is easily the messiest, the most convoluted that the story and the narrative of a Mission Impossible film has ever been. I think they do a lot of cheating and a lot of very messy corner cutting to get to certain places, to achieve a certain amount of full circle sense to this story, where they go back to previous films and bring back plot points and bring back characters and create ties that were never there. I think bringing in the character of Donalo, who has been in the marketing, so that's not a spoiler. I would have thought it was a spoiler, but they've been pretty much putting that forefront in the movie's marketing. That was easily the best part of going back to the past and making something relevant. Everything else they do in the movie really felt like it was wasted screen time. And that added in with a lot of the convoluted nature to how they're trying to establish this threat. It makes the first hour and a half of this film feel very exposition heavy. It's so explainy. It's like, this is happening, so this happens, so we have to do this, and we have to get here by this time in this window of opportunity. Otherwise, this will happen, and then this is going to happen. Otherwise, we're going to have to do this, and then the world's going to end. And there's like 7 scenes like that, it feels like. And also, it's so flashback heavy that it starts to annoy me as a viewer, because it feels like the writers don't have enough confidence that I'm able to put 2 and 2 together without you flashing something in front of me to give me a cheat code. And I'm like, bitch, I know what that means. I don't need you to fucking show me. And they have way too much of that all the way through the film, not just in the first act. I also feel like there's a bit of a missed opportunity with the villains here, where in Dead Reckoning, you had 2 major villains. You had the Entity, which is the big overarching villain, and then you had Gabriel, who's kind of like the human extension of the Entity and the more direct antagonist for Ethan Hunt. And I think that balance was really nice in Dead Reckoning. Here, I feel like the villains feel almost absent from the film until the final act. The threat is omnipresent, but the villains are not. You know, there's a structure that happens. There's a bit of a divide that happens where now the Entity and Gabriel are not necessarily one force and one motive. They're kind of off doing their own thing. And the movie never cuts back to the AI and gives us any kind of a sequence to reestablish the AI as like this actual working, living thing that's making things happen. And Gabriel is absent for almost the entire second act into the third act. So that's a little bit of an odd structure as well. That said, I think it's an incredible theatrical experience. It's a lot of fun. It's a mostly satisfying finale. And as I said, those 2 major sequences, those are worth the price of admission alone. Flaws be damned, that makes it worth it to me. So I still like this movie a lot, but it's going to definitely pale in comparison to some of the much better executed films. And the last thing that I'll say here too, because the stakes are so high and it's such a somber movie, I think it's completely devoid of any fun. Like, there's a few moments of humor that are nice, but some of that makes sense. Like that would be in my mixed category if I was to review this. Like I get not having fun during such a huge stakes part of the story, but I think that's a big piece of the Mission Impossible DNA that I wanted more of. And a lot of that has to do with the team too. I think this is one of the weaker teams that we've ever had in this franchise. And you have some favorites here like Luther, Simon Pegg's character. I really liked Haley Atwell in the last film. I don't think they have as much of a time to shine here. I don't know if there's just not enough screen time or what. Like Luther, especially, the way that he's utilized in the film is just odd to me. It felt like there was something that was edited or restructured in the editing room that just was weird. But yeah, overall, I did like the movie, but it comes down here at number 7. Number 6 for me is going to be the original Mission Impossible. And this is the movie that's most debated among fans because you have some that are very nostalgic for it. The fact that it's a standalone thriller, it's maybe more like a television series. Some people rate it very high. Other people that go to Mission Impossible films for the huge action spectacle. Obviously, you don't get a lot of that in this one. And so it's rated really low. For me, I'm somewhere in the middle. Obviously, it's in the lower half of the list, but I have nostalgia for this film. You know, I really got into Mission Impossible through the N64 game. I loved the soundtrack. Like, I basically experienced all the Mission Impossible stuff before I actually saw the film. And then when I did, I loved it. It became one of my favorites. I think that for the time, especially, it was really cool and has some nice little twists and turns and cool characters, but it is very much a standout. Much like how Mission Impossible 2 is a standout, this one is as well for different reasons. It's because of the tone and the approach of the film is more espionage thriller than huge action set piece film. Even though you do have some set pieces here, like the iconic little rappelling scene where he goes into the vault, and even like the helicopter jump and stuff like that. So I like this film a lot, but when I'm in the mood for a Mission Impossible film, it's not one of the ones that I grab very often because I'm usually craving the more dynamic, the more bombastic versions of Mission Impossible. Coming in number 5 for me is going to be Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This is where Christopher McQuarrie took over the franchise, and I think this is where you really start to see a shift in the franchise, where it becomes much more about the set pieces and the crazy Tom Cruise stunts. And I feel like storytelling to a certain extent starts to take a little bit of a back seat, as well as the fun of the team. Like the more entertaining side of character dynamics and one-liners and comedic writing and stuff like that really takes a back seat, and this goes more for just straightforward tension and action. Some people love that. I'm very much in the middle with it. Where Rogue Nation, I think, has some of the best standout sequences where you've got, obviously, Tom Cruise hanging off the side of a plane as it takes off, which is insane. You've got the underwater sequence here where he, like, dives into that water butthole and has, like, that little underwater safe. It's a really cool sequence. You've got some badass chase sequences here, from a car to motorcycles, some good fight sequences. This is where you get introduced to Rebecca Ferguson's character, who is, you know, probably my favorite, like, side character in the franchise. And I think that the team here is overall pretty strong because it's mostly a carryover from Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, but just done a little bit more seriously. But the big flaw here with me is that I never find the story of this movie to be that enticing or that interesting. Like, I often forget a lot of the plot points. I know, like, it's about the syndicate, the evil IMF, and that's about as far as I ever remember, as many times as I've seen this film. Also, as I've already hinted at, I feel like the lack of humor following up Ghost Protocol was a disappointment for me because that's one of my favorite aspects of Ghost Protocol. But Rogue Nation, I mean, like I said, all these movies I enjoy. So Rogue Nation is still awesome. It's still a great movie, but that's why I have it at number 5. It's never been my favorite. Number 4 is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, once known as Dead Reckoning Part 1. And this is basically the first half of the story that's paid off in the final reckoning. And I think for a movie that is originally meant as a part 1, the first half of a story, it's a very satisfying half of a story. We hit a trend there for a couple years where we got a lot of movies like this that were a part 1, either Across the Spider-Verse or Horizon, that Kevin Costner film, or this. There was a few others, and everyone except for Dead Reckoning, to me, felt like it left way too much unanswered, way too much lingering, and way too much unsatisfied, where it very much felt like a frustrating first half, where I feel like this movie succeeds at telling a whole story, leaving things open to be paid off, obviously, but leaving me in a place of enough satisfaction and closure where I'm like, okay, I'm good. I can wait 2 years for the next one. It's got awesome stunts and awesome action sequences in here. You got a scene where they're driving around handcuffed to each other that was very cool. Of course, the motorbike jump into the parachute was like the big premiere stunt. I wish they didn't advertise the fuck out of it because it kind of takes away the impact of actually seeing the scene in the theater. I'm glad they rectified that with the airplane sequence in Final Reckoning, but it's still a badass sequence, and you get a really cool fight scene on top of a train. I think that the entity as a villain was really unique and different, as well as the character of Gabriel. There was a lot of mystery there that unfortunately wasn't paid off as much as I wanted in the Final Reckoning. But this was a really, really solid Mission Impossible film that I think established some really good franchise potential or potential franchise ending stakes, and had a really fun time along the way. You also get a little bit more of that humor brought in here, and the dynamic between Tom Cruise and Haley Atwell is kind of the catalyst for a lot of that. I really liked her addition of her character, even though we had to lose Rebecca Ferguson to get her. A lot of people are still not forgiving of that, which I understand. So I really dug Dead Reckoning. I had a good time with it. Obviously, I don't feel like the second half of the story was as entertaining as this one, but you pair those two movies together, Dead Reckoning and The Final Reckoning, I think it's a pretty fucking solid chapter of Mission Impossible there, whether it's the end chapter or not. Coming in at number 3 is Mission Impossible 3, and this one is very odd because it felt like for a while there, this was a movie that kind of became a lot of people's favorites for a while, and this was the one that they championed and defended the most. And then since The Final Reckoning came out, I've seen so many people post their rankings online, and this one's always towards the bottom. And they're like, are we ready to admit this is one of the weaker ones? It's such a fucking like a weird schizophrenic nature to the way that the internet works with certain movies. But nonetheless, Mission Impossible 3 is number 3 for me. I really enjoy this movie for its kind of standalone nature. And what I like about it, it's the most human of any of the movies as far as the Ethan Hunt character. This is the one where he has the new wife played by Michelle Monaghan. I think we easily get the best villain of the franchise here with Philip Seymour Hoffman. There's a really nice balance here of some of that espionage of the first film with some of the action sequences of the second film, while having more fun along the way, even though you have very dark and very high stakes moments with like the fate of his wife kind of lingering in the balance, and the way the movie opens, and the fate of Kerry Russell's character and things like that. It's still a very fun movie, and I think that the action all throughout's got a really nice pace to it. I do think that the rabbit's foot side of things, like J.J. Abrams kind of has made a little bit of a habit of having like this mystery item element, this MacGuffin thing in his movies that he never explains. It's like it's kind of a signature J.J. thing that some people really hate, and I kind of get that. So they try to give some context to it in The Final Reckoning. I don't think it completely works, but yeah, the rabbit's foot thing feels like a bit of a nothing burger in the movie by design. But I have a lot of fun with this film because I think that it's the most human that Ethan Hunt ever is, when he's not being a giant superhero or a bullet sponge kind of for all the abuse that Tom Cruise puts him through with all these stunts. So there's something about this one that I always kind of hold close to the heart, so it's number 3 for me. I really love Mission Impossible 3. My top 2, they might as well be tied, because I think these are 2 of the greatest action films ever made for somewhat different reasons. But right now, as is, I think the last couple of times I've ranked the films, this is how it's played out too. Number 2 for me is going to be Mission Impossible Fallout. I think this is easily, by a landslide, the best film in this franchise that Christopher McQuarrie has given us. I think this is where they got the mix right, where it was firing on all cylinders. You do get a little bit of that humor brought back in. I think it's one of the best teams that we've ever had. I think they find a way to continuously raise the stakes throughout this film, and it has huge stakes from the time the movie starts. And the action set pieces and the way that it slowly builds to just grander and grander and grander sequences is completely impressive and awesome. I mean, you have the base jumping thing and the lightning storm, and then you have, the Tom Cruise going up the helicopter and the rope that is suspended from it, and then doing the helicopter chase that really makes like it gives you anxiety because everything's so close quarters. I think Henry Cavill is a great addition to this franchise. And even the way that by the third act, you start to slowly raise personal stakes for Ethan Hunt with his wife getting involved in everything. This is a film that I think is pretty damn incredible. The only thing that ever holds it back for me, where I have never been able to say definitively this is easily the best one where everything works, is that I do feel like every single one of the reveals in this film are incredibly obvious. You see them coming a mile away. All the mask pull-offs, all the little switcheroos, all of the allegiance changes and the villain reveals, like you just see them coming from Jump Street. And so that's always something that held this movie back for me, where I'm like, I'm having a blast all the way through this. It is not tainting my experience whatsoever, but you're not surprising me at all with anything you're trying to do here. So Mission Impossible Fallout, probably the most popular pick for best in the franchise. I totally understand why, but for me, comes in at number 2. But number 1 for me, kind of an unpopular pick, oddly enough. That's Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. This is the movie for me that was the biggest surprise, because even though I really liked Mission Impossible 3 at the time, I have grown to love it more since the franchise kind of got reignited with everything after Ghost Protocol. But after Mission Impossible 3, kind of felt like the franchise was quietly just kind of sitting in limbo. Ghost Protocol comes out, looks like a lot of fun. Eventually, me and my dad go check it out in theaters, and I was just blown away at how awesome, how fun, how incredible this movie was. I think this is my favorite team of the entire franchise. I think the dynamic here is at its best. The humor is really the main thing that holds this above all the others, because I think this is the movie that has the best comedic timing, the best writing as far as the dynamic between the characters. I think that you need to have some fun with a Mission Impossible film, and I think the Christopher McQuarrie films kind of lost sight of that a little bit and just focused on the tension and the action, and do incredible with that, but I miss some of the humor of this film and some of the earlier films. I think that the Burj Khalifa sequence is the best Tom Cruise Mission Impossible stunt. It may not be the most death-defying, like I think that goes to Final Reckoning now, but it's the most impressive visually. It's the one that was the most exciting to see in the theater, and it holds up the best in my opinion. The only negative with this film is that the villain's a little bit weak, but I think everything else is so strong that I never even really care. I never really mind a whole lot that the main villain is not the strongest here, because the side villains are interesting, and the thing going on with the drama with the Jeremy Renner character and his ties to Ethan Hunt, and the reveal by the end of the film, I think pays off nice. So there's just something about Ghost Protocol to me that feels like the most complete Mission Impossible experience that I want. But again, it might as well be tied with Fallout for my number 1. But Ghost Protocol is my favorite of the Mission Impossible films, comes in at number 1. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2025 new release reviews. I'm also going to put our 31 on 31 Action Edition up here. Now, a couple of movies have come out since then, but we include the Mission Impossible franchise as well as some other action franchises and rank them together. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.